I welcome you to the 7th International Interdisciplinary Conference 2021 on the theme Reconstructing Higher Education for Social Transformation. I'm Bakaira Godfrey from Kyambogo University, Uganda. Our presentation today is on assessing learners within large classes for effective learning outcomes in teacher education in Uganda. We have a roadmap on how we are going to present. I will start with the introduction, and our introduction starts with the background, with the enrollment in education institutions, where we look at 12,002 enrollment in Uganda of primary schools of 7.3 million, while that one of secondary schools is 655,000 students. It grew in 2016 from up to 8.6 million for primary schools and 1.5 million for secondary schools. And generally, Uganda has a total number of 15 million learners from ECCE to university, scattered in 50,688 education institutions by 2020. Our purpose was to analyze the challenge of large classes and establish effective assessment strategies for assessing learners within large classes for practical learning outcomes in teacher education in Uganda. The purpose was supported by objectives. Number 1, to find out the challenges teachers face when assessing learners. 2, generate effective assessment strategies for assessing learners. And 3, make recommendations for effective assessment practices of learners within large classes for effective learning outcomes. I want to take you to theoretical perspective to this study, and we are starting with the large class. What is considered a large class isn't easily answered, for it depends on many factors. It also depends on teacher ratio, learner-teacher ratio being more than the policy provisions, and other authorities suggest, for example, the diversity of student characteristics, and therefore, a large class is one in which characteristics and conditions present themselves as interrelated and collective constraints that impede meaningful teaching and learning. Look at these scenarios for a large class. Number 1 is class size and adult education. Scenario 2, learner-teacher ratio. Scenario 3, resources in an experiment. Number 4, basic skills development. Number 5, nature of infrastructure. 6, inadequate seating facilities and diversity of learners. 7, inadequate participation and view. 8, age and attention. 9, open education outside the forums. Positions of a teacher in terms of a classroom, open education also matters. And finally, the seating arrangement and nature of the classroom. Who is a teacher and what is teaching? A teacher is any person who regularly and academically carries out instruction, guidance, and guides knowledge to learners in terms of learners' needs as suggested by Allen 2015. It is also a process of enhancing skills and value development by Blaise and Anderson 2013, and it therefore provides for those moments and sessions where we make specific interventions to help people learn particular things. Let us look at assessment. Is the semantic basis for making inferences about learning and development for students, and many other authorities provide for the definition of assessment, and therefore assessment is a continuous process to measure, monitor, improve learning, the degree of achievements, outcomes, and decide how much objectives are accomplished as suggested by Fernandez 2012. The comparison of assessment practices here, which I called types. 3 of them: assessment for learning, which is more diagnostic and formative, assessment, assessment as learning for self-assessment, assessment of learning, which is equivalent to summative assessment. What are learning outcomes? Are user-friendly statements that tell students what they will be able to do at the end of a period of time. But they also focus on the context and potential applications of knowledge and skills. They help students connect learning in various contexts, but guide the assessment and evaluation. The conceptual framework for this study, as displayed on the slide, it has two parameters, two areas of concern. One are parameters for assessing large classes, and another one is the outcome of authentic assessment to both learners and the teacher. So we have where we are calling influences to assessment of large classes, as seen above: teacher training, curricula, learners, institutional support, teaching environment, teaching, assessment practices and resources, and its outcomes based on authentic assessment, as seen down in the array. Therefore, what is this learner assessment for? Is to guide and modify programs for better promotion of learning and student success. Provide a common definition and benchmarks for students' abilities, and effectively help them and promote their learning. It also provides feedback, mentorship, and at the same time it improves on feedback about student learning to support faculty in their work. I want to remind you of the assessment practices. There are 4 functions of assessment: diagnostic assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment. Methodology: our study was practical, evaluative, and it used mixed design and approach on teacher education practitioners. Among the others seen on the screen is photography. Our results also show the challenges as on the slide: limited instructional materials. There are also challenges of organizational skills. There is minimum attention to learners, monitoring, among the many, as you continue reading this slide. Other challenges included inadequate attention to individual students, involving students in their own assessment, lack of flexibility, and matching names with the groups and regrouping for the diversity of learners. Then how should we assess? There are many ways to do it, as listed here. Major to mention are inventories, journals, portfolios, observations, objective type of questions, projects. We can also use questionnaires and interviews. I'm providing now for the strategies of assessing large classes as in our topic. Major to remember that any assessment starts with effective facilitation, which we call effective teaching. And when you look at this slide, there are many strategies, including blending assessments into your teaching, use of technology to enhance effective assessment, among others. Other strategies include exit tickets, peer instruction, 4 corners, use of hand signals, e-assessment methods, technologies that enhance assessment, and feedback. The use of technology, as already talked about. We can use quizzes and tests through Mentimeters, a Kahoot, Google Docs or Forms. We can also use discussion forums like WhatsApp, the Zoom chats. We can engage multimedia through text and images or video. We can make presentation tools like the slideshows, sticky notes, dashboards, or a Padlet. We can also use digital videos and audio, e-books, wikis, and blogs. Very importantly, we can also use tests in the Blackboard, which can be mobile capable or browsers only. We can also create our own tests from the scratch We can also have test exceptions to allow differences in settings for different learners in the university. We can also use mobile exams when they are integrated into grader centers, similar to a web assessment. I want to make recommendations. And our first recommendation is integrating ICT in assessment in the teacher development curricula for large classes, formulating and putting in place both assessment framework and assessment policy, institute and enforce education institution assessment committees, use e-monitoring for attendance, apply e-assessment, e-scoring tools, e-platforms, including feedback provisions, and we need to educate the students on the dangers and possible sanctions for plagiarism. Members, I want to conclude by saying that we can clearly agree that the concept of a large class is a relative one. Challenges associated with teaching, managing, learning, and assessing large classes can also be found with smaller classes depending on the situation. Very important is that teachers need to view large classes from different perspectives and appreciate that in spite of various challenges, they can also provide many opportunities for learning methodologies, assessment methodologies, and tools for practical learning outcomes. I want to submit and thank you all for being available. I wish you the best.